My name is Mara Ellison. I'm 37, a registered home care nurse from Greenville, South Carolina. And if I'm being completely honest, I didn't take the job for the money. I took it because I didn't know where else to go. I had just signed my divorce papers, alone in the courthouse parking lot, while my ex-husband sat in his lifted truck laughing on a Bluetooth call like he hadn't just erased 10 years of marriage with a single signature. My family didn't even pick up the phone when I called to tell them. Not my mom, not my sister, not even a "sorry, Amara." It was like I had become an inconvenience they were glad to finally forget. So when a private agency called me about a seasonal live-in care position out in Wyoming at a remote mansion tucked in the Wind River Range, I said yes, without asking for details. They said it would be peaceful, quiet, just me, a child, and her grieving father. That was all I wanted. Quiet. Until the night I came back early and discovered the truth no one was supposed to know. Before we continue, if you've ever felt discarded or invisible, this story is for you. And if you're new here, hit that like button, subscribe, because the best revenge isn't always loud. Sometimes it's cold, calculated, and carved in silence. I arrived at Black Ridge Estate 2 days before Thanksgiving. The driver who picked me up from the tiny regional airport barely spoke. And the road was so icy, he never broke 30. By the time we pulled through the wrought iron gates, my knuckles were pale from clutching my thighs. It looked like a fairy tale had been buried alive. The house was massive, Victorian bones with dark modern skin, black glass, iron spires, and snow piled up like time itself had been trying to erase it. It didn't feel like a home. It felt like a place people left. Waiting for me at the door was Mr. Cassian Rice, the millionaire widower. He was taller than I expected, in his 50s, maybe early 60s, but cut from some sharper cloth. Charcoal coat, silver-streaked hair combed straight back, a face that had once been striking, now weathered like a granite statue that refused to fall. And silent. He said very little. "She's in the south wing," he said, voice like splintered bark. "You'll find everything you need." And that was it. No handshake, no welcome, just a nod, a turn, and the heavy click of his boots vanishing into the dark hall. The girl's name was Celine. She was 10. Delicate wasn't the word. Frail was closer. Skin like skim milk, hair like silken ash, and these wide, pale green eyes that never quite met mine. She never cried, never smiled, just whispered thank yous and yes ma'ams and sat for hours staring out the frosted window like she was waiting for something, or someone. Her medical chart said congenital autonomic dysfunction, which explained her fainting spells, body temperature issues, and the reason I had to monitor her closely. But it didn't explain the bruises. Small ones, faint yellow and plum blossoms near her ribs. When I asked, she'd flinch and say she fell off the stool. There were no stools in her room. I tried to settle in. The house was drafty, the fireplaces were cold, and the help, all 2 of them, kept their distance. Yara, the cook, wouldn't speak above a murmur. Dale, the groundskeeper, avoided eye contact completely, and Rice was always gone. Days passed in snow-muted silence. I woke Celine, bathed her, gave her meds, read to her, sang lullabies no one had sung to me. I told myself this was healing, that maybe caring for someone else would distract me from the ache in my chest. But the house made me uneasy. Doors closed themselves. I'd hear faint music down corridors I never entered. And once, I swear I found boot prints in the snow outside Celine's room. Bare feet, too large to be hers. The real unraveling began the night I left early for groceries. Yara was sick and Dale was stuck down by the frozen garage gate, so I offered to do the supply run in town. It was a 2-hour drive to the nearest open store, and I told Rice I wouldn't be back until after midnight. But I couldn't do it. Halfway through, I sat in the parking lot of a shut-down diner, staring at my reflection in the rearview mirror. I looked like a ghost. My coat still had the tag on it. I'd bought it just for the job. And yet somehow I already looked worn out. I turned back. The storm had gotten heavier, and it was a miracle I made it up the unplowed drive without skidding. I didn't want to wake anyone, so I came through the side entrance, the one near the old servant quarters, and tried to be quiet. But the moment I stepped into the corridor near the south wing, I froze. There were voices. Not one, two. A man and a girl. Celine. I crept closer. My heart was thundering in my ears. At first, I thought it was Rice. But the voice wasn't gravelly or cold. It was gentle, teasing, familiar. And Celine was laughing, a sound I had never heard from her. Peeking through the cracked door, I saw them silhouetted by the moonlight. A man, mid-30s, olive skin, dark hair tucked under a knit cap. Celine was hugging him like he'd just come home from war. I wanted to believe it was a relative, maybe an uncle. But then I heard Celine whisper, "You'll take me away this time, won't you? Before he finds out?" The man nodded and kissed her forehead. I backed away, breath hitched, coat catching on a nail near the doorway. The ripping sound echoed down the hall. The voices went silent. Then came the soft click of a door unlocking and footsteps, slow, heavy. Not from the bedroom. From behind me. I turned and saw Rice standing at the end of the corridor, half-shadowed, half-lit, holding something in his hand. It glinted. He said only 4 words. "You weren't supposed to." His voice was quiet, but it struck like a hammer. You weren't supposed to. Cassie and Reese stood at the end of the hallway, eyes locked on mine, the object in his hand catching the moonlight. A letter opener. Thin. Sharp. Still. My breath turned brittle in my lungs. I didn't run. I couldn't. My legs were cemented to the wooden floor, like the house itself had grabbed me by the ankles. Reese didn't move toward me. Not right away. He just watched, calculating. His expression didn't show anger or fear, just disappointment, like a father catching a kid in the liquor cabinet. And somehow, that was worse. Then he slipped the letter opener into his coat pocket, nodded once, and said calmly, "Come with me, Mara." We sat in his study. The fire was lit, but it gave off no warmth. The walls were lined with old books and mounted hunting rifles. A dead silence hung in the air, thick and sour, like something rotting beneath the floorboards. He poured himself a glass of bourbon and didn't offer me one. I was still standing, coat on, my hands stiff at my sides. "That man," I said finally, "he was in her room. She said he was taking her away before you found out. What is going on?" Reese took a slow sip, then placed the glass down with surgical precision. "You were hired to keep her stable, comfortable, out of trouble. That's it." "That's not an answer." His jaw tightened, and for a second I thought he might lunge across the desk. But instead, he let out a long breath through his nose and said, "His name is Rafi Alvan, my late wife's cousin." He stood, walked to the fireplace, and tossed in a log like it was nothing. She always believed he'd be Celine's protector if anything ever happened to her. But the man is unstable. He's been trying to get custody since the funeral. He thinks I'm In fit. Are you? I asked. I didn't mean to sound accusatory, but it came out hard, and I didn't take it back. Reese stared into the flames. You think I hurt my daughter? I didn't answer. I didn't have to. He turned and walked slowly toward me. I tensed, but he didn't touch me, just stood there, inches away, voice low. You don't know what Celine's capable of. That shook me. She's 10. She's dangerous. The words settled like dust in the room. Unreal. Stupid, even. I've seen her bruises. You've seen her act. That girl has been manipulating people since she could speak. You think you formed some bond with her in a few weeks? She's done this before. Conned caretakers, therapists, lawyers. You're not special, Mara. You're just the next useful pawn. I left the study that night shaken. Everything in my gut screamed that something was wrong, but I didn't know who to believe. I lay awake in my quarters, fully dressed under the thick covers, staring at the ceiling beams like they might open up and drop answers on me. Could a child fake illness? Sure. Could a child fake fear? Probably. But those bruises were real. That coldness and Reese's voice, realer. And that man, Rafi, he kissed her forehead. She hugged him like he was the only solid thing she had ever held. That wasn't manipulation. That was grief. Still, something didn't add up. So I made a choice. I started digging. The next day, I waited until Reese left for whatever it was he did during the day. Yara was sick again, same nausea and dizziness, and Dale was out back chipping ice from the greenhouse roof. I asked Celine if she wanted to do puzzles in the sunroom. She gave me a quiet nod, her lips barely curving, and I took it as a yes. Once she was settled, I headed upstairs, to the 3rd floor, the forbidden one. Reese had told me once bluntly that it was just storage, but there was a keypad on the stairwell door, and storage doesn't need a damn passcode. Except this time, it was unlocked. That felt intentional, like bait. I slipped in. The hallway was narrow and cold, lit only by weak winter light bleeding through frosted skylights. At the end, a half-open door beckoned. I crept inside. It was a nursery. Dust covered the crib, the rocking horse, the shelves stacked with faded books. But the weird thing was, there were 2 cribs. One had a small plaque burned into the wood, Celine. The other, Aria. My heart skipped. There had been another child. I searched the room and found an old photo album inside a toy chest. The first picture was of a woman, Reese's late wife, I assumed, holding 2 baby girls wrapped in matching ivory blankets. Twins. My hands trembled flipping through the pages. Birthday parties, 1 child missing, play dates, then just Celine. Always alone. No mention of Aria anywhere else. I shoved the album into my coat and snuck back down, head spinning. Celine had a twin sister? Why hadn't Reese told me that? That night, while Reese was downstairs on a call, I returned to the sunroom. Celine was drawing. Her pale fingers moved like feathers over the paper. I sat beside her and took a breath. Celine, I said softly, do you remember Aria? She froze. Her pencil dropped. Then slowly she turned to me. Her face was unreadable. You're not supposed to know, she whispered. But I do, and I want to understand. What happened to her? Celine looked toward the door, then back at me. Daddy says she fell. And what do you say? She didn't answer. Her hands curled into fists. Does Rafi know about Aria? Celine blinked once, twice. Then she leaned in and whispered something so quietly I had to hold my breath to catch it. He thinks I'm her.
I stared at her, pulse roaring in my ears. What? She nodded slowly, a tear sliding down her cheek. He doesn't know I'm not Arya. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed clutching the album, my mind racing. If Rafi thought Celine was Arya, then that meant something happened to the real Celine? Or had the names been switched? Was the sick girl I'd been caring for even the person I thought she was? And why would Reese lie about it? Why hide an entire daughter? I was about to get up and confront him, storm his office with the album, and demand the truth, when I heard a sound. Scratching, like something clawing against the glass outside my bedroom window. I turned slowly and saw a shape in the snow. A figure, standing still, watching, holding something in their hand. Not a weapon, not a flashlight. A white teddy bear. And just before it turned and vanished into the trees, I swear to God, it looked exactly like Celine.
When I saw that figure in the snow, small, still, holding the white teddy bear, I knew something was deeply, fatally wrong. Because Celine was asleep upstairs. I had checked on her. I had tucked her in. But the child outside, she looked just like her. Same pale face, same silver blonde hair whipping in the wind. She didn't wave, didn't move, just turned slowly and disappeared into the trees like she'd been waiting to be seen. Just once. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in my armchair, knees pulled up under my coat, watching frost climb up the windows, waiting for daylight to break the spell I felt trapped inside. The next morning, I did two things. First, I made a cup of coffee so strong, it could have dissolved my anxiety, though it didn't. Then I went to Yara, the cook, and asked the one question I should have asked weeks ago. Yara, was there ever another child here? She froze mid-slice, the knife hovering over a pear. Her eyes met mine, full of something between guilt and fear. You shouldn't ask about that. I already did. I saw the nursery. She looked away. Then you saw their names. So it's true? She sighed and sat down, her voice barely louder than a breath. They were twins, born premature. Arya was stronger. Celine was sickly from the start. But Reese, he adored Arya, called her his bright one. And Celine, well, she got left in the shadow. I felt something turn cold in my chest. So what happened? She whispered. There was an accident. 3 winters ago. The lake froze early. The girls went out on the ice when no one was watching. Only one came back. My blood turned to glass. Which one? Yara looked up at me, tears in her eyes. Reese said it was Celine, but I never believed him. Not with how quickly she changed after, how quiet she got, how wrong things felt. And Rafi? He's been trying to prove it ever since. He thinks Reese lied, that Arya died, that Celine is alive, but Reese made her take her sister's name. Because Arya was his favorite? I didn't wait. I marched straight into Reese's study and dropped the nursery album on his desk. Tell me the truth. Now. He didn't flinch, just closed the book gently and folded his hands. You found it. You told me she was an only child. She is. Now. That's not what I asked. He stood and turned toward the window, the light hitting his profile just enough to show the crack in his facade. They went out on the lake. I heard the scream from the north wing. By the time I got there, the ice had split. Arya was already under. He paused.
The one who survived, she was in shock, could barely speak for weeks. But when she finally did, she started calling herself Arya, not Celine. So you let her believe it? I encouraged it. I stared at him, horrified. You made her become the daughter you wanted. I gave her a second chance. I gave myself one. His voice broke slightly, just for a second. But I didn't feel pity. I felt rage. You buried a child, Reese, and then you buried the truth. No, he said, finally facing me. I buried my mistake. You don't understand what Celine was becoming, what she did to Arya that day. She was a child. She pushed her, Mara. The room went dead silent. He leaned forward. They were fighting, screaming, jealousy, rage. I saw it in her eyes after. I know what happened. I saved her the only way I knew how. I backed away slowly. You didn't save her. You sentenced her. I packed my bags that night. I didn't tell Reese. I didn't say goodbye. But before I left, I went to Celine's room. She was sitting by the window, holding the teddy bear from the snow. I hadn't seen it in her room before. Where did you get that? I asked gently. She didn't look at me. She brought it back. Who? She turned to me, eyes empty and bottomless. The one in the ice. I drove through the snowstorm like it was trying to stop me, but I made it back to town, barely, and checked into a roadside inn with weak coffee and flickering lights. I called Rafi. I told him everything. He came the next day with a private investigator, a lawyer, and an emergency custody order. The DNA results came back in 2 weeks. The girl I cared for wasn't Arya Reese. She was Celine Reese, just as Rafi suspected. The daughter Reese couldn't love, so he rebranded her. A trial followed. Closed door. Sealed. But Reese didn't walk away clean. The estate was seized, his assets frozen pending investigation. And Celine, the real one, was placed in Rafi's care. He renamed her. Not Arya, not Celine. May, short for Megan, which he said meant strength in Welsh. She picked it herself. A year later, I live in Montana now. Smaller house, quiet life. Still a nurse, still working with children. Only now it's on my terms. May writes me letters. Not emails, not texts. Actual pen-to-paper letters with stickers and little drawings. Her latest one had a snowflake inside. She wrote, "The snow doesn't scare me anymore, because I know who I am, and I'm not her. I don't think Reese will ever understand what he did to that child. But that's not my burden to carry anymore. My job was to protect her, to help her remember the girl buried beneath all that pain. And I did. I helped bring her back. Sometimes revenge doesn't come as fire and fury. Sometimes it comes in truth, slowly, painfully pulled from the ice. And sometimes the best justice is watching someone become everything they were told they could never be. Thanks for listening to my story. If you've ever been silenced, misjudged, or made to feel invisible, I hope you know you're not alone, and you're not who they said you are. Sometimes the most powerful revenge is choosing truth over silence, healing over hiding, and walking away with your dignity intact. If you've ever had to reclaim your identity or expose a secret that others wanted buried, I'd love to hear your story in the comments. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video, because somewhere out there, someone else needs to know you don't have to stay buried in the snow.